ain't finished yet.
ZenVStyle.com. 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 ZenVStyle.com.
Welcome to the Black Agenda Podcast. I'm your co-host, Adrian Devin, along with co-host Devin Dito. Today is April 3rd, 2021, and it's weekly roundup number 11. Plenty of news to cover, Devin, as always, so let's get into it. Our first segment here, we wanted to talk within this first topic about Congressman Matt Gaetz. Everyone's been talking about him, so as a news outlet, we got to kind of give our little spin to it and kind of make sure our community is educated on what's going on. So to give you a little bit of background about it, federal prosecutors are examining whether or not Gaetz and a political ally who is facing sex trafficking allegations may have paid underage girls or offered them gifts in exchange for sex And this is according to two people that are familiar with the matter, and they told this to the Associated Press on yesterday. They were citing unnamed sources familiar with the investigation, text message, receipts, different things that the New York Times reported that a Florida Republican is suspected of having sex with women recruited online by Joel Greenberg, who is a former Seminole County tax collector who has been indicted on federal charges, including sex trafficking, for encounters at hotels and other locations on at least one occasion involving the use of the illegal drug ecstasy. So a lot to really dive off and get into this. And, Devin, if you're a person that's in Congress, this is the last thing you want to really be associated with. This is the last thing you want to have your name tied in. But according to the Times, sources say that Gaetz also asked the women to recruit others for sex with him and his friends. It's also reported that at least one of the women agreed to have sex with a third man connected to Florida Republican politics. And again, this is all reported in the Times. So, Devin, I don't know how you can really spin yourself out of this when there are a lot of different, narratives that are confirming this. But I'm sure, Matt Gaetz, he's, obviously his team has already come back and said some things about not, being involved here. But obviously, this is going to be an investigation that's going to be ongoing. There's going to be a lot to dive off in and really try to uncover how Matt Gaetz and all these other people are connected to the sex trafficking.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, a terrible story. Again, these are allegations. We don't know if these are true, but again, it's just the fact that they do have, receipts and things like that they've gone in and they've done the work to make, to see if at least there were payments given to women to have sex with, Mr. Gaetz and his friend here. But I think, we have to, again, after our former president, we have to make sure in the future when we're voting for congressmen and people like that. In particular, Matt Gaetz is like very popular for being out there on cable television all the time, on Hannity, on Fox News. So everybody, he's kind of built up this persona, this fame of being, anti, Joe Biden and the Democrats and liberals, and making sure to be the one that stand next to Donald Trump the entire time that he was in office. So he's kind of made a name for himself and maybe in a way, created a target, for stories like these to pop up. But I think also the other question, or the thing we need to keep in mind, is who do our politicians associate themselves with? The person that he's being named with, this friend of his, Mr. Greenberg, has a kind of a checkered past there. So, it goes into the judgment of a congressman like Matt Gaetz, who's already fairly popular, to ask the question of why are you associating yourself with people like this? And so, Adrian, it just kind of goes into, we have to hold our politicians accountable for the things that they're doing, but also the people that they associate themselves with, because that goes into a bigger question of whether they have solid judgment, whether you're a representative, congressman, senator, president. We saw this with Donald Trump. Lots of his friends were getting, arrested, whether it's, campaign managers, friends. There was a lot of shadiness going on. And that made its way into the White House. That didn't just go away because he became president. So, when you're voting for a politician, you cannot just look at the politician. We have to look at who they associate themselves with, both people and companies. And so it says a lot, about you as a person and your character when you associate yourselves with certain people. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a terrible story, for Matt Gaetz. And again, these are allegations. He's under investigation, but we don't know if this is going to lead to some kind of criminal charges in the end. It could not. But, Adrian, when our leaders do make mistakes like this, it just kind of calls into question. One, it tells us they're not perfect. And I think sometimes we do expect them to be perfect. But they are still, at the end of the day, people. But we do expect better judgment, from our leaders. And we have to hold them accountable, when things like this happen.
Yeah, I definitely agree, Devin. And I guess to some people's defense, I could definitely see where If you say, you fault me for association of certain people, I may not have known their ties to certain things, but I definitely think in this case, Greenberg had already been indicted and things, so there was some evidence to kind of know what was going on and maybe not, associate himself there. And it's also going to be hard for Matt Gaetz to kind of bounce back because one of the things that they're looking at are some payments that happen on Cash App and Apple Pay, where Gaetz looks like he paid Greensburg and that went to one of the women. And the women told their friends they had received the payments for sex with the two men, which were sometimes paid in cash withdrawals from the hotel ATM. So it's like I said, these are all allegations and things, but it's going to be really, really tough to kind of position himself away from this. He's already gone out and said that, the Justice Department says he's the subject of the investigation, not the target. So that it almost sounds like some, trying to change the wording of it, but still you're a part of the, you're a part of the investigation. So definitely hoping that whatever, comes out of this, he's held accountable because, there's a lot within the Republican Party that's always pegging this narrative of the Democrats being pedophiles and having all this sex trafficking and things, but lo and behold, it's Republicans that we see. It's almost like when Republicans say Democrats are doing voter fraud and voter suppression, but it's always Republicans who are almost telling on themselves. So hoping that whatever the investigation unfolds, it's something that we can get some justice out of this, for what's going on, because our political leaders, they can make mistakes. I'm going to eventually be a political leader and I'm probably going to make mistakes because we're all human. But I definitely think that there are certain mistakes, especially like sex trafficking, that, that's almost like a conscious decision where you're just really going about making that mistake versus, oh, I didn't realize this bill was going to have a negative impact, like maybe the crimes bill or something like that. That's a mistake that I can accept from a politician versus a politician just going straight for sex trafficking with underage girls. That's a little bit harder of a pill to swallow. So Devin, I don't really know what will come out of this. We'll definitely, viewers and fans will definitely make sure to keep you in the loop as this, unfolds, so we can make sure to educate our community on what's happening. Devin, another big, story here, and this was, tragic, very sad, especially considering the fact that we just had the Capitol riot insurrection on January 6th. So a few months after that, we've got this officer who's died. So Devin, why don't you take the lead on this one here?
Yeah, and so again, like you say, another tragic story, at the Capitol. But this time we're talking about another Capitol police officer killed. And this was on Friday, and this was after a man rammed his car into two officers at a barricade outside the U.S. Capitol, and he then emerged out of the car wielding a knife. And so this was the second line of duty death this year. Of course, we know the first one happened on January 6th with the insurrection, but the video shows the driver of the car emerging with the knife in his hand and starting to run at the pair of officers. Now, the first officer is Capitol Police Acting Chief Yogananda Pittman, told reporters, and then authorities, they shot the suspect who died at the hospital, and the suspect has actually now been identified as Noah Green. And so here's a picture of him for you. His name is Noah Green, and so he's been identified as a suspect who slammed his car into the U.S. Capitol police officers, which resulted in the death of one. Now, Green is 25 of Indiana, and he's the driver, like I said, and he has, they've also, among other things in his past, he is, they say, a follower of the Nation of Islam. There's no indication that the Nation of Islam played a role in him going to the Capitol and conducting this attack. Just want to make sure we get that out there. There's also been social media posts that have attributed Green, implied that he was unemployed and suffering from personal issues. So there could have been, some mental things going on there. But it's just not clear yet what the possible motives are for Green for his alleged actions on Friday, and the police have ruled out terrorism. And Green is not to be, previously known by authorities, so he didn't necessarily have a record. So it looks like, at this point, what we do know is that one Capitol police officer has died from this attack. Two officers were actually attacked. One of them has passed away because of injuries from this, and that officer was William Billy Evans. He was an 18-year veteran who was a member of the police department's first responders unit, and he was the seventh Capitol police officer to die in the history of that department, two of which have come in the last 3 months. So they've really been catching it tough, and of course, President Biden has already put out a statement that he and his wife Jill are heartbroken, to learn of this attack, and they've expressed their condolences to the Evans family, and flags have already been directed to be at half staff at the White House. And so, again, like the Bidens, we send our condolences to the Evans family. And, the Capitol Police have had it tough. You lose 7 people in the history of the department, but almost half of that has come in just the last 3 months. So understand that this is abnormal. This is not something that happens often. And again, we don't know exactly what led, Mr. Green to do that. Yes, he was a follower of the Nation of Islam, and he donated to the Nation of Islam, and he followed Minister Louis Farrakhan. But again, there is no indication that him doing those things led him to be at the Capitol that day. So we cannot just rush to a conclusion as far as that is concerned. And trying to connect the dots where there's not a story there. So, Adrian, it's tough to see this happen again. And it makes you a little bit worried as far as, what's next. Because, after the insurrection, we were already kind of on high alert as far as, they were already telling us more threats could possibly be coming. And here we are with what looks to be a lone wolf type of situation, ramming his car, going up, stabbing the officers, not connected to, terrorism at the moment, but it just puts people on alert again. And it's just not something you want to see as we're trying to reopen the country after the pandemic. It's just not what you want to see right now. And it's just unfortunate, that this has happened. And it's just more of a reminder to make sure that we have to be, ready at all times.
This is very true, Devin. It's one of these things that you look at Green, and it looks definitely different than the average person we see that's doing these sorts of things, just because we usually don't see a lot of minorities kind of committing these sort of actions. But clearly, there's something going on here. Whether there's a reaction to police brutality, a reaction to injustice, or maybe there's some sort of a lack of mental health within Green's neighborhood where he needed some attention. But whatever the motive or whatever it happened, we definitely need to dive off into it, because it's revealing that there could be a potential threat to law enforcement. And I definitely think, we're at a point in our society where you mention law enforcement and there's usually a negative connotation with that. But we have to get to a point where we have, police within our communities, but our communities and the police have respect for each other, and they're not over policing the communities, and the communities are, having some sort of, respect for the police enforcement there. So whenever we think about this threat that you see that Green did, we don't want this to happen in Dallas or LA or New York. We don't want this to continue to escalate. So we definitely need to figure out, if this is a connection to something else, or if it is just a lone wolf. Hopefully it is a lone wolf and we don't continue to see repeats of this. Because when you think about, what peace might look like out of this, it's definitely not going to be, more attacks on law enforcement. If Green's motive was, we need better police, within our Black communities, killing police officers is definitely not going to be something that brings about justice. I'm not saying that you always have to lay down or somebody hits you, you turn the other cheek, but definitely going and taking this sort of action into your own hands doesn't. I'm not a part of the Nation of Islam, but I don't imagine this would help anybody's cause no matter what sort of organization or religious group or whatever you believe in. It doesn't matter. This isn't probably going to help your mission. So, yeah, Devin. Again, we definitely want to make sure to send our condolences to the Evans family, and just hope that this is, like I said, a lone incident, and we don't continue to have more and more repeats of people trying to act out violence against law enforcement. We're all trying to keep talking about this kumbaya moment, Devin, and we keep seeing more and more stories that are ripping that apart from us, whether it be the one that we talked about in Atlanta or in Colorado, and now this. There's just a lot of division and a lot of tension within our country right now. So I'm hoping that now that we've got a true leader at the helm, President Biden, we can start seeing some leadership that will trickle down, on the state level, the local level, and try to coalesce some of these moments that we're having within our communities.
No, I mean that's the right message there, and hopefully, we understand that this has been a trying year. They said it's implied that he might have been unemployed, so we know almost 20 million jobs were lost last year, and we have barely gotten half of that back. So there could be more people out there. Not saying that they're going to go carry out these types of attacks, but this is a fragile time for folks in the country, because so many people are financially unstable for the first time in a long time at, no fault of their own. So we just have to make sure we look out for people, and check on your friends, family. If you haven't talked to them in a while, just check on them and make sure they're okay, because we have to look out for each other, because this is a very fragile moment where things feel a little uneasy after the last election, after a pandemic. We have to make sure we look out for each other as we try to recover and get back to whatever normal is going to be after this pandemic. So we'll make sure to keep you updated on that story there with Nora Green at the Capitol. But before we go into break, we did want to let you know that there's been some big news really out of Georgia regarding this voting bill. So we talked about it last week. Major League Baseball was saying they were possibly going to look at moving the All-Star game out of Atlanta, but that has gone from possibly to they are going to move the All-Star game out of Atlanta. And so Major League Commissioner Rob Manfred said in a statement, the decision was made after conversations with teams and players that moving the July 13th game out of Georgia was the best way to demonstrate their values as a sport. And they will also move the Major League Baseball draft out of Georgia. And so they say MLB supports voting rights for all Americans and opposes restrictions to the ballot box. But of course, Republicans have already reacted, lashing out at MLB. You've seen Jeff Duncan, representative for South Carolina, saying he's instructing his staff to cobble together legislation that would strip MLB of its federal antitrust exception. And then you also have Georgia Governor Brian Kemp saying that this is, quote, cancel culture and woke political activists coming for every aspect of your life, sports included. He went on to say in his quote that this is the direct result of repeated lies from Joe Biden and Stacey Abrams as to why MLB decided to move their game out of Georgia. We're sure more businesses will take a stand in Georgia, that this one MLB will not be the only one to take a stand here. So we'll make sure to keep you posted on that. And so we're going to take our very first break, and when we come back, we're going to dig into what you would call an infrastructure bill, but that doesn't really look like what you would think an infrastructure bill will look like. So President Biden unveiled it this week, and we're going to talk about it after the break.
What is Grambling? Grambling is growing. It's a community. Grambling is an education, an experience. Grambling is legacy, tradition, and the future. What is Grambling? Grambling is all of this and more. Grambling is the place where everybody is somebody.
To All right, welcome back. So, like I said before the break, we're going to dig into President Biden's infrastructure bill. And so this is not, we know this is not the sexiest topic, word, anything like that, but we do stress that you stick with us because we do want to give you just some things that you could look forward to in this infrastructure bill. Because, like I say, it's not your normal infrastructure bill. We really could stop calling it an infrastructure bill because it's very little. Well, not very little, but a lot of it has nothing to do with what you would think infrastructure is. So, with that said, President Joe Biden did lay out his next proposal, which is a roughly $2 trillion plan for improving the nation's infrastructure and shifting to green energy. And so this is going to be spent $2 trillion over the next 8 years. And he unveiled this, dubbed the American Jobs Plan, at an event in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He unveiled it and gave everybody specifics on it. But we already knew this before President Biden, that the infrastructure in our country has always been in need of repair the last few decades. And we actually have a C- score from the American Society of Civil Engineers, which said an additional $2.6 trillion in funding is required over the next decade. But Biden is pitching his plan as an investment to benefit communities of color, rural Americans, and others that have been burdened by decay or lagging modernization. And so this infrastructure plan is the first of a two-part proposal to help the nation's economy. And so here's a graphic here we're going to show you just to give you an idea what's in this $2 trillion bill here. So we'll start from the top here. Transportation gets more than half, which is about $621 billion. And that's going to be in there. And then you have home care services and workforce. Again, not necessarily what you would think would be related to infrastructure, but that's going to be money to go towards home care workers and also to increase the wages that home care workers get. $300 billion is going to go towards manufacturing, $213 billion towards housing. And then research and development is about $180 billion. And they're going to hopefully help to establish the U.S. as a leader in climate science, innovation, research, and development. And then water, surprisingly, $111 billion. And this is helping to replace all of the nation's lead pipes. Every single lead pipe in the country would be replaced. And we know lead pipes can be extremely dangerous, as we saw what happened in Flint. You can kill people and it can do extreme damage mentally to children. So there's $111 billion to swap out the nation's water pipes. There's $100 billion for schools. And then another $100 billion given to our digital infrastructure to help get high-speed internet access to everybody in the country. Then there's also $100 billion in there for workforce development. So I think that's going to be something with retraining workers. And then there's $18 billion for veterans, hospitals, and federal buildings. So the question, $2 trillion bill, how are we going to pay for this monstrosity? And so Biden does have a plan. So part of it is going to be one, it's going to raise the corporate income tax to 28%. I think President Trump cut that from 35% all the way down to 21%. But Biden's going to raise it back up to 28%. And then he's going to also institute a global minimum tax. Now, this is a huge difference because we know companies move money around in different countries so that they can avoid paying taxes, on the money that they're making. So this bill would institute a 21% global minimum income tax, global minimum tax on U.S. corporations. No matter where that money is, they would pay 21% on it. Also, this way it would put a tax on book income. It would be a 15 minimum tax on the largest corporations that report to investors rather than what's reported to the IRS. And then there's something there with corporate inversions. We don't want to get too technical here, but Adrian, $2 trillion. We just passed a $1.9 trillion coronavirus package. And here we are again with $2 trillion more dollars, but this time it's for infrastructure. And again, a lot of what we just read is not what you would normally think of when you think of an infrastructure bill.
No, not at all. But it's really good to see this. I mean, it's part one of a two-part package to kind of help us out. So I'm laughing because I can only imagine how much part two is going to cost. But Devin, viewers, if you don't know, I live in Los Angeles, and being that I live here, I see so many billionaires, millionaires who have homes in Bel Air, Hollywoods, and things like that. And whenever I think about these taxes that President Biden are proposing, I'm like, man, there is a lot of money to fix the things that we need fixing, whether it's homelessness, infrastructure, job training, making sure that every American has high-speed internet. So kudos to President Biden for almost being like an Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders kind of president, and saying, corporations, y'all have made a lot of money off of us. We're paying your salaries. We're making sure that your shareholders get the equity they deserve out of your company. Well, you should, have some equity in paying for everything that we need. So really, really good to see that it's coming out of that, as opposed to raising any sort of tax on individuals, because he's not even raising the taxes on the 1%ers. It's all looking at the corporations and things like that. If you've got a company like Amazon doesn't pay any money in federal taxes, yet they make Jeff Bezos over $100 billion a year or whatever. It's really good to see this. The other thing, viewers, that we really wanted to make sure to point out with this, whenever you're thinking about this infrastructure plan, there's a lot of racial justice within this plan. One of the things that we're going to do an episode on within the podcast is looking at how infrastructure leads to disparities within minority groups. It's really, really easy to see, because if you look at the way a lot of cities are laid out, a lot of the projects or the ghettos and different things, or the Section 8 housing where a lot of Black and minority people live, they're not around the economic developments or the centers of development for the city. It's harder for those people to even have a job, because if you don't have a car, you can't get around in a lot of those places because you're not near everything. So that's why this is really, really important when you're talking about job training. If you're someone who's a minority, think about your communities right now. How many individuals need some job training right now to get something after being laid off, and now in their job, they only need 5 people because everyone's working remotely? That job training and development is really key. Or, you think about how important it is right now in a virtual setting to have high-speed internet. Yes, infrastructure, as Devin has said, is not very sexy, but there's so many different things and so many different layers within this bill that we should all be paying attention to. That's why Devin and I wanted to make sure to talk about this story, because it's really, really important for us as citizens to be more engaged in what Congress and what the president is doing, not to overindulge in it to engross our lives, but just to know what they're trying to do. Because you might need to call a Senator Joe Manchin about this and say, hey, Joe, we're all for high-speed internet for all Americans and things like this. You may have to coax your senators and your representatives to really support this, because Devin, this bill, with it being trillions of dollars, after, like you said, we just passed the COVID package, I don't know how it's going to get through Congress. It's a lot of money. I agree that corporations have the money to pay the bill, but I definitely think it's going to be really, really hard, even with all the racial justice within the bill, to sell this over. So again, kudos to the administration for it, but this is probably going to be like his Affordable Care Act. It's probably going to take some time, I feel like.
No, you're correct, but they have 2 avenues. They can try to pass it through Congress. Republicans, we know they probably gawked at the fact that it was $2 trillion in spending, but yes, I think they're going to try to pass it through budget reconciliation, like how they did the COVID-19 package. It's a complicated process, but they can do it with just a simple, majority there, where it's 50-49 Democrats or 51-49 Democrats, and then 50-50, and then Kamala Harris would cast a tie-breaking vote there. But they could do that. But like you say, this could be an Affordable Care Act type of deal where they pass it, and it just becomes, I don't think it'll be unpopular like the Affordable Care Act was, because everybody kind of knows that we need infrastructure spending. This is necessary. The question is, do we need all the other things that are coming within this infrastructure bill? So there's it's like 2 arguments going. It's like, we do need this. The question is how much, but also, does home care and healthcare services count as infrastructure? You have to really reimagine what you think when you hear the word infrastructure. That could be people that you're investing in, not so much physical concrete roads, bridges, and things like that. The other part is too, there's going to be another bill coming also that's going to be called the American Family Plan. That's going to have even more money there, particularly for, I think they're going to be talking about universal pre-K, and different, things like that that really affect families in the country. So that's going to be even more, money that could be coming out. So this is going to be interesting. And like you say, this is a tall task. It's a tall ask for Congress. It's a tall ask for the country, having just passed 1.9 trillion to say, hey, we need to spend another 2 trillion. But I think the argument is, look, we have to do something at some point about the infrastructure. It cannot continue on just ignoring it or trying to piecemeal it here and there. We have to stay competitive, and it's going to take massive amounts of money. It wouldn't be this bad had we just invested it, decades ago over time. It's just now we're having to pay it all at once. So it seems like it's a monstrosity. So we'll update you, when we get the new bill, the American Family Plan. And of course, we'll also let you know what's going on with the American Jobs Plan from President Biden. But we do want to move on to some more financial news and just give you some good things that are going on. So the first one here is that the economy is in a recovery. It looks like last month, employers added about 916,000 jobs. And so that was a huge burst. And this came, I think this came before they actually passed the COVID package, but this is good news nonetheless. And so the March increase, 916,000, is actually the most jobs we've added since August. And so that was double February's gain of 468,000. The unemployment rate did tick down a little bit from 6.2% to 6%. But overall, when you look at it, the unemployment rate for Asians rose to 6%, but the jobless rate for Hispanics is still at 7.9%. For whites, is 5.4%, and for African Americans, it still sits at 9.6%. We still have the highest unemployment rate out of all, the different ethnicities in the country, and this is something we always talk about. Usually, people of color, Black folks, usually are the first fired during a crisis and the last hired, and we are seeing that play out again. We're still sitting at almost 10% unemployment in the Black community. And so in March, just a little tidbit here, 21% of employed people are actually still working from home or teleworking because of the pandemic. I'm one of them, or we're both one of them. So we're included in that. And then lastly, leisure and hospitality added 280,000 jobs in March, which of course was expected with things opening up as quick as they were. And with all that, we are still 8 million jobs short of what we lost last year. So we have a very, very long way to go. But Adrian, this is good news though. The economy is recovering, employers are hiring, we sent money out to people. So this is definitely much needed for the country.
Yes, and in my mind, Devin, I think that this, and I get everyone has their own opinion to do whatever they want, but I feel like this is more of a case for everyone to get their vaccines, no matter what you feel, what you believe. This is because in order for us to continue this trend, we've got to get vaccinated. We've got to get out of this pandemic. We got to get COVID, like the common cold. We got to make it something like that, so we can really start to have this robust economy that we've been having with President Obama, President Trump, and we'll start to see with President Biden. One of the other cool things is coming out of the IRS. Not as sexy of news, but for the people who this is going to benefit, it's probably going to be very sexy for them. The IRS announced Thursday that they will be recalculating the taxes Americans paid on unemployment benefits to make sure that those who filed before the American Rescue Plan was signed into law don't miss out on key provision in the bill. Along with the third round of the $1,400 stimulus checks, the new package, COVID package they passed, is changing how taxes are levied on unemployment compensation for people who make less than $150,000. So this is really helping to give people a break, because before you had to obviously pay taxes on unemployment. So here, this is helping to give people a break. They're expected to send out refunds. The first one expected to be in May and will continue into the summer months. So this is really going to be good for those eligible taxpayers. The IRS will take care of everything, so you won't have to worry about filing an amended tax return. So that's really good, because the IRS is always kind of more a stickler, makes you do things. So it's nice to see that they'll be doing something to kind of help you out there. But yeah, this is really, really nice. It says the IRS will also start the recalculation process for Americans for the eligible $10,200 unemployment compensation exclusion. So it's going to be something really, really nice to see here. Just wanted to keep you updated on what's going on, give you a little news on the IRS, just in case you're one of those filers who got unemployment throughout this pandemic. Maybe you'll start to see some of those refunds here in the next couple weeks or so.
Yeah, definitely some good news, makes it easier. I know I was one of those who needed to go. I thought I was going to have to go back and file an amended return, but I'm glad the IRS is going to take care of that for us. And the last thing, of course, if you didn't know, the tax filing deadline is May 17th, everybody. But if you live in Texas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana, you only have until June 15th to file. That is because of the historic winter storm that we saw in February. So for everybody, May 17th is what you have. That's the deadline to file your taxes. But if you're in Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, you have until June 15th to actually file. So I just want to give you that update. The next thing, staying on finances, which could be a big deal if it does happen, is that we are getting word that at least Joe Biden has now requested that his education secretary, Miguel Cardona, prepare a report on the president's legal authority to cancel up to $50,000 in student debt per borrower. And so on the campaign trail, Biden said he supported about $10,000 in student loan forgiveness, but he has been under pressure since the moment he walked into office from Democrats, saying that he needed to do something about student loans. And so we got word that he's at least exploring the idea. Now, will it happen? We don't know. But at least we're here, at least having the conversation. Senator Chuck Schumer has said Biden can do it with the swipe of a pen. He can cancel $50,000 of debt on his own. But other folks say he's going to court challenges. He tried to nix the debt on his own. And so just to get an idea of how large of a problem this is, there are currently 44 million people who are student loan borrowers in the United States, and the country's outstanding balance is expected to exceed $2 trillion by 2022. If all federal student loan borrowers got $10,000 of their debt forgiven, the outstanding debt would fall down to about 1.3 trillion from 1.7. And then if 1/3 of those borrowers, about 14 million people, would actually see their balances reset to zero if Joe Biden chose to do $10,000 in cancellations. But if he did 50, then that would shrink the outstanding student loan debt to about $7 billion. And that 50,000 forgive all of the debt for about 80% of federal student loan borrowers. So about 36 million people could actually see their loans go to zero with the stroke of a pen. It's not going to be that easy, but that just gives you an idea, Adrian, just how large a problem this really is. We talk about this all the time, but we're talking 36 million people could go from paying, $200 to $300 per month to zero, which you would think if they did that would be an economic boom. But of course, people are arguing, no, we shouldn't do that. They went to school, they should have to pay back these loans. You made a decision, they're adults. So there are a lot of people out there like, what about me? I pay for my loans. And then, of course, you have those who are for this, who are saying, look, we strapped this with thousands of dollars of debt. We told them to go to school and would get a good job. And that just didn't happen. You had the 2008 financial crisis, which, you graduated after 2008, the job market wasn't great. And obviously things have changed from when their parents went to school.
You're right, Devin. This is something that we should it almost should be a no-brainer, just because first off, you shouldn't try to penalize someone for wanting to better themselves. If someone's wanting to go to school to maybe position themselves for a better career, them having to go into debt just to get into school shouldn't be a thing that we should have to worry about. And I get that argument, how some people say, well, I had to go through it, I've been there, done that. But I mean, to me, that doesn't even that's not a valid argument here, because it doesn't, it's irrelevant. Just because you had to do it doesn't make a difference. I mean, there's a lot of people who were born before cars were invented and they had to walk everywhere, but they're not complaining right now. I mean, it's you don't have to worry about that. So it's one of those things that we have to understand. We as a society, everyone matters. We're a chain link is the easiest kind of analogy there, and we need everybody to be as successful, as educated, as knowledgeable, the best citizen they can be. And being able to not worry about student loan debt. Maybe you can invest in the stock market, invest in your community, maybe open up a business or different things of that nature. Maybe you can even help in the own infrastructure of your local community, so that the government doesn't have to do it, because the local community has more local resources. So really, really a good need here. I hope that President Biden does this executive order, swipes that pen and gets rid of that, because I would be a part of that 36 million. So that would be really, really nice to not have to worry about that. But Devin, the other part of that is just the fact that, college tuition is a lot more expensive. You look at a private college between, 1992, or rather before 1992, that was about $26,000 to go to a private school. Public schools were about $10,000. You look within the past 3 years, if you look at a private institution, it's about $49,000 versus a public about $21,000. So I mean, nearly double the amount of money to go to college now. So really, we can see that there's a need for us to kind of address, college tuition. And the easiest thing to do is just make them free, so that people can start bettering themselves. But we'll see what happens with that, viewers. We'll make sure to keep you in the loop on what's going on with this plan. Devin and I, we would love to kind of see this happen, because, we're both following that 36 million. We probably got a lot of you that are watching that fall into that. Before we do our break, we wanted to make sure to give you some insight into this a little bit, because we actually did an episode with one of the main curators, Mary Elliott, who helped on the 1619 project. But it was announced that Hulu is actually going to be producing a documentary series based on the 1619 project. And this was actually reported in the New York Times. One of the things that's really, really interesting about this is it's kind of, I guess, an outgrowth of a deal that was announced last summer, where they're actually going to be doing a lot more content other than this documentary series. There's supposed to be television series and different things out of this. And this is a deal by the Times, Lionsgate, and Oprah Winfrey. So she's kind of coming out doing some things. But they're going to be doing a portfolio of different films, TV series, and other content. But just wanted to give you a little bit of update on that, just because we did an episode on it. And it's an important topic that kind of helps to spell out some racial diversity and get that topic going. We're going to take our next break here. When we come back, we're going to get into our third segment, where John Boehner actually is coming out with a book, and it's got some really, really exciting things in there. Really great things that kind of speak to what the Republican Party is doing right now. So stick with us, and we'll be right back.
Here at Tuskegee University, some of our historical figures like Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, those are some of the people that created or started that Tuskegee experience.
This place is so different. You have a support system, a real support system. We may ball and parlay, but the most important thing we do is graduate. And after we graduate, we accelerate in everything we do.
welcome back. Let's get into our third segment here. So like we were talking before, former House Speaker John Boehner is coming out with a new book called On the House. I mean, he's not really holding back here. Really colorful language that he's using to tell about things that happen in the halls of power. It's really, really great. I wish more former politicians would come out and kind of dialogue some of the things that they, that happen that, we don't really get to see because obviously no one wants to tell it. But in an essay adopted from the book and published by Politico on Friday, Boehner unloads on right-wing media personalities and several fellow Republicans. The former Ohio congressman describes a Republican takeover of the House of Representatives in 2010 and the beginnings of the populist far right. He goes on to kind of give a quote where he says, incrementalists, compromise, that wasn't their thing. A lot of them wanted to blow up Washington. He wrote this in a 2010 class of lawmakers, or rather wrote this to a 2010 class of lawmakers. In the opening paragraph, he says just about anyone could have been elected into the 2010 midterms as long as they were Republican, which, if you can go back for a second, President Obama was elected in 2008. So there was a lot of, white lash, as we kind of talked about it, where a lot of people wanted to, go towards the Republicans in 2010. So that's what he's kind of referencing there. He said you could get a total moron and could, rather he said you could be a total moron and get elected by having an R next to your name. And that year, by the way, we did pick up a fair number in that category. He went on to talk about several different things on how on the arrival of these newly elected Republican members, they really didn't try to improve Congress in Boehner's view. He said that he had to actually explain how to get things done. A lot of them went straight through, a lot of that went straight through their ears for most of them. So I guess they really weren't wanting to listen and really try to understand how Congress is working. Again, he was saying that they wanted to really blow up Washington rather than try to, pay to the needs of their constituents. But beyond the fringe ideas, Boehner writes that Fox promotions of little-known far-right politicians allowed them to really exert once unthinkable influence in the hall of Congress, which we kind of have seen, especially throughout the Trump administration, how that bind or that tie between the Republican Party and Fox News really helped to, for lack of a better term, perpetuate fake news and different things like that. So, Boehner is really kind of speaking to that. He even describes how a former Minnesota Congressman, Michelle Bachmann, who was wanting a seat at the table on the powerful House and Ways Means Committee with the House, she wanted to be on that. But whenever Boehner said no, she said that she would go talk to Sean Hannity and everybody on Fox. Just again, kind of further speaking to that, that tie between the party and Fox News. Devin, it's really awesome whenever you see things like that. Because again, even if this was something where someone from, like maybe a Senator Harry Reid or some other Democrat that was coming out with a book like this and laying it out, it would be really, really great to kind of see what they're actually thinking. Because obviously he could say a lot of this stuff whenever he was in office. But now that he's no longer in the spotlight, it's really, really nice to see. I mean, he even talked about, Senator Ted Cruz and how, even though he wasn't in the, the House of Representatives, but he had pretty much said that he was a head lunatic. I mean, he was someone that just really thought that he was smarter than anybody, but was pretty much a lunatic. And we can kind of see that in what Senator Cruz is doing right now, flying to Cancun while his people are frozen over. So, Devin, there's a lot to probably digest within his book. There's going to be some really, really nice nuggets. I'm sure we'll be able to do a little episode maybe in the podcast about it. Maybe we can reach out to him and invite him on to kind of talk a little bit about it. But what's your general reactions to what former Speaker John Boehner is saying?
Well, I think it's an accurate diagnosis of what happened in 2010 and what we're going through now. It gives context to why we are where we are, where you have these politicians who really, like he was saying, aren't really interested in improving the country and trying to work together to get things done. They're really just there to upset the apple cart. They're really there to just kind of destroy Washington and just, go off of fear and and anxiety of their voters. They're not really there to do the work to get things done. And I think that's obvious by the fact that they became the party of no. And after 2010, they weren't doing anything. They were just saying, no, we're not going to work with President Obama. We're not going to work with the Democrats. They controlled both houses of Congress, and they just refused to do anything with that other than try to repeal Obamacare hundreds of times unsuccessfully because they couldn't agree on their own healthcare plan. And so it spilled over into the Trump administration, where the only thing they could agree on was the tax cut bill. And that was it. We never got an infrastructure bill, even though the president said that. We never got a healthcare bill from the Republicans. They've had years to try to fix some of the problems that are in this country. But as you can see, Michelle Bachmann's, the Ted Cruz's, now you have the other guy, Jim Jordan from Ohio, the Matt Gaetzes of the world. They're not
Marjorie Greene Taylor.
Yeah, Marjorie Greene. They're not interested at all in trying to do anything constructive while they are there in Washington. Their only goal is to be there to be, a dissonant voice on every single issue, criticize the liberals, criticize the Democrats, and there's no such thing as a compromise or working together, or that's not the politics that we need up there. But that's the attitude that they took. They carried it over from Obama. Yes, you could say Obama maybe didn't try to work with Republicans as much as he should have, but they literally were calling the man a Muslim and trying to question the fact that his birth certificate, didn't exist and that he was born in Kenya. So I wouldn't work with those people either. But it just, starting really 2008 during the election with Sarah Palin and afterwards, there just was this willingness on the Republican side to just go with any kind of conspiracy as long as it got you votes. We just got away from telling people the truth. It became more of a one-liners that weren't true, making up things, bending the truth as much as we could to get people fired up and emotional. But it's fake. It's not. None of that is real. The birth certificate wasn't real. Him being a Muslim wasn't real. The death panels with the Obamacare, bill was not real. And then you had the election fraud with Donald Trump. Again, none of that is real, but they have people thinking that these things are real. And now we're in a place where you have the Democrats thinking half the country is, stupid because they're buying all of these, conspiracy theories. And then you got the other side thinking, somehow Hillary Clinton is a sex trafficker at a pizza joint. Like, that's where we are.
It's crazy. It's foolishness. That's why I'm so glad that he called out a lot of the media people, like Sean Hannity, saying like he's one of the worst, because they have really helped to perpetuate these crackpot theories that a lot of Republicans, not all Republicans, but a lot who are on that far right side are believing, unfortunately. And whenever you think about, what is the future of the Republican Party, it's very bleak in my mind. I don't know how you come out of 4 years of Donald Trump. You're still holding on to Donald Trump. You're endorsing people like Marjorie Greene Taylor. You're endorsing your Sean Hannity's and things like that. Your Tucker Carlson's or whatever his name is. I always probably invert it because he's got two first names or whatever. But it's just their party. They have to have some new direction. They're going to have more people like you and I in there, Devin, to show them, the wrong of their ways and say, hey, maybe you do need more Black people, or maybe you do need, to accept, that people can have rights and liberties and kind of care about your fellow citizens. I don't really know if they're ever going to come around to that moment, Devin, because it seems like they kind of have, Donald Trump aimed up for 2024. So we'll kind of see how that, goes. But I hope that, the words of John Boehner can kind of resonate within the party. And maybe for some of those members who are newly in there and on the fence and haven't really decided if they're going to drink the Kool-Aid or not, or which color pill they're going to take, maybe these words will be enough to get them to take the right pill. So they'll be okay, but we'll see.
No, the last thing I'll say is just that these people that we're putting in Congress, yes, some of this is their fault, but a lot of it is just on the voters, period. Like we cannot have, Republicans always worry about the uneducated voter. I think there are a lot of uneducated Republican voters who are voting for the Matt Gaetzes and Marjorie Green Taylors. We have to be a better informed citizenry, that we cannot believe crap like there are people out there stealing votes and stuffing, ballot boxes and sending in fake mail-in ballots and things like that. We have to be better informed about the issues that we're voting on, and understand that these people are only here to make you outraged so that you show up at the ballot box. That is their only goal. They're not there to do anything constructive. Like, at a certain point, we have to ask the Republican Party, where are the receipts for the work that you're supposed to be up there doing? Like, yeah, tax cuts is good, but where's the other thing? Where is the infrastructure, healthcare, veterans? Like, you got to give us more than, hey, we don't want to raise taxes on businesses, or we're here to fight the Democrats. At a certain point, they have to do some work, and the voters have to hold them accountable. We cannot just keep going with this emotional outrage machine that comes up every 2 to 4 years, and we never actually get anything done. And so I just wanted to make that point, that some of that is just on the citizen. We've got to do better. We've got to be much better informed. Stop sitting in front of Fox News and Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity. There is nothing educational during those times when those two hosts are up there. So before we go,
you're absolutely right.
Before we go, we did want to give you a COVID update here quickly before we get out here. So first off, yes, COVID is still here, folks. It's not going away. The first thing here, cases, we're at about 30 million total cases. Hospitalizations are around 34,000. Again, remember, like 2-3 months ago, they were up over 60,000. So that's come down a lot. We are at 552,000 deaths, a little bit over that. And so the big news that came out this week was that COVID-19 was actually the third leading cause of death in 2020. So for those of you who believe that somehow this is a hoax, this is no. A lot more people died in the year of 2020, and a lot of that can be attributed to COVID-19. And it came in third place after heart disease and cancer for 2020. And so again, what we already knew, the CDC is saying that COVID-19 deaths were higher among American Indian, Alaskan Native persons, Hispanics, Blacks, any person of color other than whites saw a higher death rate from COVID-19. And so it just shows you, again, it really exposed the inequities in our healthcare system and how we treat people. And we have to be better at prevention of, underlying diseases like heart disease and cancer and diabetes and hypertension that only complicate the situation when you have a new disease like COVID that comes through. But we do have a vaccine. And so at least on that front, we've administered about 162 million vaccines to Americans. People who are fully vaccinated against COVID can resume travel at low risk to themselves. And so, Adrian, once you get your second shot, you are good to go as far as traveling is concerned. But we do have Pfizer and BioNTech says that their coronavirus vaccines protection lasts at least 6 months. And so that's far longer than 90 days that have been stated beforehand. So if you did get the Pfizer vaccine, you do at least have protection for 6 months, could be longer, and not 3 months like they told us before. Lastly, they are starting to test this in children. They're going to be starting a new trial with about 6,000 healthy children between the ages of 6 months to 12 years old. They're going to be trying that. So we'll update you on that. And then lastly, there's, COVID availability, the vaccine availability is increasing almost every day. So we're at the point now, President Biden says about 90% of US adults will be eligible for COVID-19 shots by April 19th. This is way up, from June, July is what they were saying at first. And so to date, 31 states have opened up eligibility to all adults by April 19th. And so lastly here, again, the COVID numbers are ticking up a little bit. The Midwest has seen about a 58% increase in new cases over the past 14 days. So just again, make sure you still wear your mask, wash your hands, do your social distancing if you have not gotten your COVID vaccine. So a lot of COVID news right there, stuffed in there. And lastly, before we go, we did want to let you know the women's NCAA tournament, the championship game is set tomorrow night, 5 o'clock on ESPN. We'll have Stanford versus Arizona. So yesterday, we saw Stanford beat South Carolina 66-65. That was a very close game. And then the big game came between Arizona and UConn, where Arizona actually upset UConn 69-59. Ari McDonald dropped 26 points on the Huskies last night. So you're going to see an all Pac-12 women's final tomorrow night, 5 o'clock on ESPN, Stanford versus Arizona. And so with that, that's going to end it for our news portion of the show. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to get into some lighter news, some funnier news, and we'll get into our quick hits and we'll get you out of here. So stick with us. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. So we're going to get into our quick hits here. And our first story is going to come out of, I believe this is Spain. So there was a mafia fugitive who they say couldn't take the heat. So he went to the kitchen, but that's exactly how his name is Marc Ferran Claude Biart got caught after spending 7 years on the run. And this is according to Calabria News, which is an Italian news outlet. So Biart was actually hiding from national authorities for alleged drug trafficking, but he was actually tracked down and arrested in the Dominican Republic on Wednesday. And so this is pretty hilarious, the way that they actually figured out where he was. So let me fix this video here. All right, so there's a little video playing there for you. But the 53-year-old man was actually found 5,000 miles away from his hometown of Rome on a cooking YouTube channel that he launched with his wife in Boca Chica, which is a municipality near Santo Domingo. And so his YouTube channel was not named, but the Calabria News described the channel as being focused on Italian cuisine. And so what happened is that law enforcement officials were clued in that the YouTube channel belonged to him because the chef reviewed the food while never revealing his face, but there were body parts that were visible, and you could see the chef had tattoos that matched him. What authorities were actually looking for they were actually looking for him. They matched his tattoos, and so they went down to the Dominican Republic, tracked him down, and arrested him. And that's what you're watching right now. And this was a group effort between Central Criminal Police, Interpol, and a couple other agencies. So if you're going to be on the run, don't start a cooking channel on YouTube. Let's not do that. So he's been on the run 7 years, and YouTube is what gave him up.
Yeah, I would definitely not do that, Devin. If you're going to run from law enforcement, don't be around anything that's going to put you on the internet. Like just dig yourself a hole and be there for a while. Our next little quick hit, we wanted to kind of highlight the fact that the NAACP had their Image Awards. I think it happened multi-days, but it happened this past week. It's actually their 52nd NAACP Image Award, aired on BET and other networks. Anthony Anderson actually returned to host it. It's actually his 8th year in a row to do it. He did win an award for Outstanding Actor for his comedy role in Blackish, which I haven't really watched much, but kudos to him. Apparently, Blackish is doing really well because there was 2 others who won. Dion Cole and Martin also won some awards there. However, Insecure, which is another show I haven't gotten into, actually won the award for Outstanding Comedy Series. LeBron James, kudos to him for winning the President's Award. Eddie Murphy, great job winning the Hall of Fame award, probably for what he's done in Dolomite. That was, I don't know if you watched that, Devin, but that was
I did.
that was a really, really good movie. He just came out. Probably, I don't. Maybe it's what he did in Coming to America too. Really wasn't worth as much, other than the fact that it was kind of a great movie since it was a sequel. But if you haven't checked it out, viewers, the NAACP Image Awards, they've got tons of categories from music to TV, writing, social justice. You can actually check out their website. They've got a website that kind of goes over all the categories, or you can go to variety.com. They actually have a really nice cheat sheet for you that walks you through every category. We can post the website in our comments here for you. But yeah, the 52nd NAACP Image Awards happened, and we wanted to kind of recognize it.
Very cool. Very cool. So our next story here is not as exciting as that one, but interesting and kind of weird. So Nike, you may have heard Lil Nas X has somehow released a Satan shoe, and it had the Nike check on it. And so Nike actually sued and filed a restraining order against MSCHF, which is an art collective and apparel company that partnered with Lil Nas X to create 666 pairs of what they have branded Satan shoes, which sold out in a minute on the day that they were actually released. And so this restraining order will block them from further selling the shoes. And Nike argued that the marketing of the shoe, which contained no disclaimers or disassociations with their company, caused customers confusion and prompted a boycott. The musician Lil Nas X collaborated with the company MSCHF on a quickly sold out offering, which they dubbed the Satan shoes. They not only have a devil focused theme, but they actually do contain a drop of human blood, which was drawn from MSCHF employees. And this was actually confirmed by NBC. So these shoes do have a drop of blood in the bottom there. And so the company that made them has maintained that people do not plan to wear the shoes in public, saying that they are pieces of art. But Nike hit back with an Instagram post from Miley Cyrus, who is, guess what? She's wearing her shoes outside. So obviously, some people do plan to wear them, but that is just a bizarre story, Adrian. I don't know why. I don't know if this is just for attention, but yeah, this is strange. I think they were like $1,000. It was very expensive.
Anytime you have something, with Satan in the beginning of it, you probably is not going to be a good thing. I mean, I don't, I don't know who's all, you don't have to be a Christian or anything, but Satan and that name and many other religions and different things usually doesn't have a good connotation. So I'm really surprised even to see that they can kind of consider that as art, but I'm glad that Nike kind of won and could kind of stop them from selling that. Another story, this is actually one to kind of make you feel good, make you feel that hopefully if you can live like this Officer Smith, maybe you can still get around like he did. But this is out of Arkansas, where it looks like a 91-year-old LC Buckshot Smith is a gentleman's name. He's a police officer who's been on the force for 56 years. And like I said, he's 91 and he still does not want to retire. In fact, 10 years ago, Smith tried to retire after being a sheriff's deputy, but after missing work for a few months, he just came back immediately. And it says that he's only going to retire when the good Lord calls him home, or I guess says so. I guess he's probably not going to retire for a while, because if you're 91 and you're still able to work, you're doing really, really well. He decided to actually join the police force in the 60s with the passion and excitement of being a police officer. Since then, he's been well loved by the small town, and everybody in the community greets him and knows him really well. Over the years, he's served as a court bailiff, a responder. He's even done security for neighborhoods, as well as doing security for annual festivals and other events that happen in Camden, Arkansas. Smith only goes to work 4 days a week, so I guess being 91, they gave him 1 day off and made sure he's got weekends off. Check this out, though, Devin. When he's not at work, he's either spending time with his lady friend or attending church services. So, I know 91 still ticking. I mean, he's got a lady friend on the side, going to church. I mean, he's making it happen.
He is. That's how I want to do.
It's
I want to have lady friends. I love it. Our All right, so our next story here is out of the sports world, and so this is between Brooklyn Nets superstar Kevin Durant and actor Michael Rappaport. So Durant has had to apologize to the actor for the offensive language that he used in a heated social media exchange earlier this week. And so Michael Rappaport, who's there on the right, he posted screenshots on Twitter of his private messages with Kevin Durant, some of which included homophobic and misogynistic language. And so this beef actually began in December when Rappaport criticized Durant's post-game interview with NBA co-host Charles Barkley. And so Durant gave a one-word answer to most of Barkley's questions, and that left Rappaport feeling some kind of way. So Michael Rappaport went on Twitter and said Durant seemed deeply in his feelings with the NBA TNT crew after the game. And he said, the superstar is super sensitive about everything. Don't do the interview. Of course, Kevin Durant, as we all know, is kind of sensitive to social media. And so he clapped back in Michael Rappaport and, of course, said all kind of things that were kind of out of line. And so Rappaport posted the actual messages on Twitter and said he receives threats and disgusting messages daily, but never in his wildest dreams did he think Kevin Durant would be among them. And so speaking to reporters on Thursday, Durant had to apologize for the foul language he directed, saying that he's sorry that people have seen the language he used and said, that's not what I want people to see or hear from me, but hopefully I can move past it and get back out there on the floor. He also commented under Rappaport's post on Instagram Wednesday saying, my bad, I apologize, making clear that he would never fight Michael Rappaport. And so to wrap this up here, Durant was actually fined by the NBA. It was $50,000 for using homophobic language in his messages. And in a statement on Friday, the league confirmed that the fine is for offensive and derogatory language on social media. So little beef playing out off the court, but interesting story there between Kevin Durant and Michael Rappaport. Hopefully they can make it up and move on.
Yeah, I hope so. That's a lot of craziness right there, Devin. Speaking of craziness, this is a story that's really, really crazy, viewers, for you. This is out of New Mexico. I guess the moral is make sure you leave your windows up when you go into a store. But there was a man who returned to his car after being in a store not even very long, and he reported that there was a swarm of nearly 15,000 honeybees that had taken residence within his vehicle. So he actually called the fire department to get some help. And they said that they came out, and the man, like I said, was only in the store within 10 minutes. And when they got there, they called. Fortunately, they had a resident beekeeper on the force, which I guess you don't really find that very often, people who keep bees. But Jesse Johnson, who's 37, he was an off-duty firefighter with years and years of beekeeping experience. He actually came, and I think within about half an hour, he was able to remove all of the bees there. But Jesse was saying that, normally whenever bees start to move like that, they're very docile. They're just trying to find a new home. But, like I said, it's just interesting that the guy or the man who actually owned the car was only in the store for maybe 10 minutes. His window was down. And within 10 minutes, he had 15,000 bees, that took residence within his car. So again, moral of the story, if you go into a store, make sure you let your windows up, because you probably don't want bees there unless you're a beekeeper like Jesse Johnson. But that was a crazy story, Devin. But that does it for us. Right at 15 minutes. We're viewers. We've been mentioning time a lot because eventually you're going to see us on like CNN or MSNBC. And we know with them, the majors, they're all about timing, and they'll cut you off short, even if they got to get to a break. So that's why we're getting ready for the future for you, because we're going to get there. But wanted to always end our episode and give you a little bit of insight into what's coming up in the future. One of the first things that coming up. It's going to be this upcoming Tuesday, April the 6th. Going to be doing our interview with the history makers. Really awesome opportunity because Devin and I, we did a little Google research to try to highlight some Black nonprofits. And this was one institution that you don't really see. I mean, obviously you hear about the NAACP, the National Urban League, but History Makers is a really, really nice organization. Their goal is to create a digital archive for African-American culture and history. Their founder and president, or rather founder and executive director, Juliana Richardson, she's going to be on the show with us to talk about what they've been doing, interviewing leaders from all kinds of things over the past 20 years. So make sure you look out for that interview. You can watch it on YouTube, watch it on Facebook. You can also listen to it through our host Podbean or all of our other podcast directories. But yeah, mark your calendars, April 6th. That's going to be a great interview. Devin, tell them about some of the other things we got lined up for April.
Yes, so for the month of April, again, we have some good stuff coming up. We're going to be talking about Black home ownership, banking and communities, and we'll even be speaking with the PR coach for Killer Mike, Jennifer R. Farmer. She's releasing a new book, and it's very, very good. So I'm really looking forward to that interview. Again, we're back on regular schedule, so we'll be having interviews come out on Tuesday, both the audio version and the video version that's going to play that night. So this upcoming Tuesday, you get to see Juliana Richardson. And so, as always, we'll be back here every Saturday at 7:30 p.m. to bring you the news the next week. So Saturday, April 10th, we'll be right back here at our usual time, bringing you the news. And so, again, before we go, we always like to mention that, this venture here does cost a little bit of money on the backside. And so we would appreciate anything that you're willing to give us. You can go to blackagendapod.com. The link is right there. At the bottom, you can give us, $1, $2, $5, $10, whatever you're willing to give. We would absolutely appreciate it, and we can put it towards what we're doing here, with our weekly roundups and our episodes. But also, this would help us partner with other nonprofits, and so your dollars are extremely important and needed. And so, give us a little bit if you can. blackagendapod.com. And then just to give you an idea of the organizations we're trying to partnership with, we've started a charity of the month. And so this month for April, we're going to be recognizing an organization called Strive. And so Strive actually has a 36-year track record for serving people who face the greatest obstacles to employment. And they help a population that's seeking a better life, to acquire the skills and attitudes they need to find sustained employment. And so the majority of people who walk through Strive's doors have no source of income, yet the majority of graduates go on to gain meaningful employment and achieve economic self-sufficiency. So an incredible organization that's doing some great work. That's Strive, 36-year track record of serving people who have the greatest obstacles to employment. So if you can, check them out. Just Google Strive. Their site will come up. We're just giving them some airtime, some recognition for the incredible work, that they're doing. So before we go, we always like to tell you, you can find us on social media. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Black Agenda Pod. Also, you can like, share, and follow us, subscribe to us on YouTube, and also wherever you listen to your music, you can find the Black Agenda Podcast. So with that's going to do it for us. Adrian, any last thoughts before we get out of here?
No, other than make sure you check out our regular episodes on Tuesdays and make sure you come back on Saturdays.
Absolutely. So until then, we'll catch you next Saturday. We appreciate you watching. We'll catch you next time.
Perfect. Right.